Lamar Bryant is charged with first-degree murder. Deputies say he shot and killed Takesha Eads.
Watch News Tonight, Gabriel read through the new court documents and has what happened before the shooting.
The new court documents show the mom of four was trying to leave the marriage before she was shot to death.
On March 25th, 2025, the silent a suburban home in Orlando, Florida was shattered by a burst of gunfire. Inside the bathroom, 42-year-old Takesha Eads lay dead, murdered by the man she once called her husband. Her body was discovered after neighbors heard the shots and called 911. Her killer didn't run. He simply waited. The man who pulled the trigger? Lamar Antonio Bryant. Her estranged husband, 41 years old. The motive? She wanted out of the marriage. He didn't. She filed for divorce. He refused to sign the papers. And on that spring afternoon, he made a final, irreversible decision. He had just picked up one of their daughters from school. He stopped at a liquor store and drank behind the wheel. He visited a storage unit where he kept drugs and guns. He loaded 2 firearms, placed them on the center console, and returned home. Minutes later, he followed Takesha into the house, and she never came out alive. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was deliberate, premeditated, and terrifying in its simplicity. She followed the right steps. She involved the courts. She separated. She even involved her church community for support. But none of it stopped the bullet. How does a woman trying to legally end her marriage wind up murdered by the very man she's trying to escape? Why do so many domestic violence cases escalate when a woman finally decides to leave? And what are the warning signs, if any, that this will be her final day? This is a true story of Takesha Renee Eads, a mother, a church member, a woman who tried to move on, and the man who refused to let her go. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where you're watching from, and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds. Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Takesha Renee Eads was a 42-year-old woman living in Orlando, Florida. While her official occupation was not publicly disclosed, her daily life and reputation centered around family and community involvement. She was a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 5, making her a central figure within a multi-generational household in her community. She was not seen as a private individual, but rather a consistent presence, visible, known, and active in faith-based programs. Takesha's public identity was rooted in her participation at United Hands Ministry in Orlando. She was involved in the church's praise dance ministry and community outreach programs for nearly a decade. This level of commitment indicated a structured weekly schedule and a pattern of dependable service. Her contributions to the ministry included both performance-based worship and logistical support for events and services, which positioned her as both a spiritual participant and operational team member within her congregation. The church described her as a jewel, a term used by church leaders to reflect her perceived value to the institution and community. In terms of her personal life, Takesha's family ties appear to be strong. She had 4 children, with whom she maintained active relationships, and she was involved in the lives of her grandchildren. Family members and church leaders frequently reference her as a central caregiver, both in practice and influence. These details illustrate her role as a family matriarch, someone whose home life likely revolved around providing stability, supervision, and emotional support to multiple generations. She was known for her consistency, kindness, and visibility. Her presence at events, her role in worship, and her ability to connect with community members shaped the public perception of her as approachable and trustworthy. Church staff describe her involvement as faithful, meaning that she regularly attended and participated in ministry activities without requiring follow-up or persuasion. There were no public records of prior criminal activity, instability, or erratic behavior linked to her name. All available information positioned her as a cooperative member of her community. She was, by all documented accounts, a dependable adult with no public history of conflict outside of the incident that would ultimately claim her life. Do you think community support is enough to protect victims of domestic abuse? Why do you think some abusers escalate when their victims begin to break free? Lamar Antonio Bryant, 41, was a husband of Takeshia Eads. Details about the beginning of their relationship remain largely private. There is no publicly available timeline showing when they were married or for how long. However, it is confirmed that they share at least one child, and he maintained access to the home where Takeshia was later killed. This indicates an ongoing co-parenting or cohabitation arrangement. Even during periods of separation, their relationship at some point became strained enough that Takeshia filed for divorce. The court records from Orange County confirm her intention to dissolve the marriage legally, but Bryant refused to sign the papers. His refusal indicates a lack of consent to the legal process and possibly a desire to maintain control over the relationship. This decision created a legal impasse, which effectively stalled the divorce proceedings. As a result, Takeshia was placed in a limbo state, no longer wanting the relationship, but unable to finalize her exit through legal means. Sources linked to the case state that Takeshia cited irreconcilable differences as the reason for seeking divorce. The term is standard in divorce filings and typically refers to deep-seated disagreements or lifestyle incompatibilities that cannot be resolved. In domestic violence contexts, it is often used to avoid detailing emotional, psychological, or physical abuse unless required by the court. Though not officially confirmed through court filings or police reports, there were suggestions of controlling behavior by Lamar Bryant. Some of these allegations were made indirectly by family members or through implications made by church representatives after the murder. While there is no detailed public record of abuse or restraining orders, the escalation of events, culminating in Takeshia's death, raises questions about the power dynamics in the relationship. Bryant's decision to refuse divorce proceedings shows a rejection of legal separation and a potential inability or unwillingness to accept loss of control over his partner. This refusal became a key turning point in the eventual outcome of the relationship. It moved the dynamic from a marital disagreement into a legally contentious and potentially dangerous situation. Without a finalized divorce, and without protective legal restrictions like a restraining order, Bryant retained both physical access to Takeshia and proximity to her daily life. This legal and personal access was exploited on the day of a murder. Why do some individuals refuse to accept divorce as a final outcome? Should courts be more aggressive in handling stalled divorce filings due to one partner's refusal? In the final days before her murder, 42-year-old Takeshia Renee Eads maintained a routine that showed no immediate signs of danger. She remained actively involved in the daily lives of her 4 children. She ensured that they were taken to and from school, helped manage household responsibilities, and maintained a consistent church schedule. To her family, church community, and those in her orbit, everything appeared stable. Takeshia was known at United Hands Ministry in Orlando as a dependable and deeply committed member. She participated in praise dance routines and supported the ministry's outreach programs. These included food drives, women's groups, and weekend events that brought resources to underprivileged members of the community. Takeshia had attended church services regularly up until the week of her murder. Her visible presence continued right up to the Sunday before the incident. Family members and church associates later confirmed that they had observed no overt signs of immediate distress. There were no public confrontations, no recorded threats. Takeshia did not express concern to pastors or friends regarding specific fears about her estranged husband, Lamar Antonio Bryant. Her decision to file for divorce had been made earlier, and although the legal process was ongoing, she continued with life as usual. She did not report any recent escalations to law enforcement. At the time, Bryant still had access to parts of the family's daily routine. While separated from Takeshia, he was allowed to maintain visitation with their daughter. This meant that on certain days, he would be responsible for school pickups and other parenting duties. The specific boundaries of separation are unclear, but evidence shows that he continued to interact with their children on a regular basis. Despite the divorce filing, there was no restraining order in place. Takeshia had not filed one, and law enforcement had not imposed any emergency orders against Bryant. This allowed him to continue access to the home, family car, and children's schedule. Surveillance or security measures were not heightened. There is no record that Takeshia had changed her locks, installed cameras, or taken personal security precautions beyond the divorce filing itself. In retrospect, the lack of visible conflict or known threats made the events of March 25, 2025, all the more unpredictable from the outside. But the day unfolded in a sequence of events that suggested a deliberate, premeditated plan by Bryant to end her life. On the afternoon of March 25, 2025, Lamar Antonio Bryant initiated a series of actions that would end with a homicide. He began by picking up one of his daughters from school. This was part of the informal parenting arrangement still in place during the couple's separation. According to investigators, there were no altercations or signs of instability during the pickup. After collecting his daughter, Bryant made an unscheduled stop at a local liquor store. Surveillance and eyewitness reports confirm he purchased alcohol. He consumed liquor while driving, a detail later corroborated by police. This decision to drink behind the wheel marked the beginning of what would escalate into lethal behavior. Following this, Bryant drove to a storage facility that he had privately rented. Inside the unit were narcotics and multiple firearms. These items were not disclosed to family members, and it remains unclear whether Takeshia was aware of the existence of the storage unit or its contents. At this storage location, Bryant selected 2 loaded firearms and returned to his vehicle. He placed the firearms in the center console area within arm's reach. This move showed intention. The weapons were not concealed in the trunk, nor were they stored away for self-defense purposes. The positioning indicated a readiness to use them. Bryant then resumed his journey home, where Takeshia was already present. He brought their daughter with him, placing her in the middle of what would soon become a crime scene. The child was inside the vehicle or home during the moments before the shooting, though authorities have not released details about her proximity during the actual murder. This sequence, school pickup, alcohol consumption, access to firearms, and return to the family home with weapons, reveals a clear pattern of progression. It was not impulsive. Each step suggested premeditation. Upon arriving at the family home in Orlando, Takeshia entered the house first. She was unaware of the presence of 2 loaded guns in the vehicle. There was no visible conflict as she entered. Bryant followed her inside minutes later, leaving the child either in the car or in another room. The exact movements are not public, but within a short span of time, gunfire erupted inside the residence. Neighbors reported hearing the gunshots and immediately alerted authorities. Emergency calls placed in 911 described the sounds as rapid and unmistakable. Responding officers arrived at the scene to find Takeshia, Renee Eads, unresponsive in the bathroom. She had sustained multiple gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead on the scene.
Lamar Bryant is charged with first-degree murder. Deputies say he shot and killed Takeshia Eads.
Watch News Tonight, Gabrielle Diaz read through the new court documents and has what happened before the shooting.
The new court documents show the mom of 4 was trying to leave the marriage before she was shot to death. Lamar Bryant faced a judge Thursday, accused of killing his wife at their home in Orange County.
Sir, you were arrested on a warrant for first-degree premeditated murder signed by Judge Dean. He set you at no bond.
According to an arrest affidavit, a 911 caller reported, quote, "My son-in-law shot my daughter." When deputies responded to the shooting in Orla Vista Tuesday, they found 42-year-old Takeshia Eads in the bathroom with a gunshot wound to the head. The new documents show the daughters were home when their mom was killed, with one of them saying, before the shooting, Bryant picked them up from school and stopped at a liquor store, then started drinking and driving. At some point, Bryant allegedly stopped at a storage unit and went inside. His daughter told investigators the unit is where he keeps guns, and that when he came back to the car, Bryant removed 2 firearms from his pockets and placed them on the center console. The affidavit claims when Bryant drove to the house, Takeshia was on the porch, then went into the bathroom with Bryant following her inside. All of a sudden came sounds of several gunshots. Deputies say 2 people ran out the house, and when Bryant came out, Takeshia's daughter asked him, "What's going on?" She said Bryant shrugged his shoulders and said, "Nothing," then left. Investigators added that they learned Takesha recently filed for divorce from Bryant, but he refused to sign the papers.
The bathroom showed signs of being the location of a direct confrontation. Whether she fled there in an attempt to escape or was cornered has not been publicly confirmed. No weapons were found on Takesha's person. There were no signs she had attempted to defend herself. The shots appeared to have been fired at close range. Bryant did not attempt to flee. He remained at the scene when law enforcement arrived. He was taken into custody without resistance. Investigators immediately began collecting evidence, including the firearms used in the killing, surveillance footage, and the testimonies of neighbors. The child, who was present during these events, was placed under the care of relatives. It is not publicly confirmed whether she witnessed a murder or the immediate aftermath. Bryant was charged with first-degree murder. The classification was based on evidence of planning, as demonstrated by the series of events that day: retrieval of guns, alcohol consumption, and return to house with a prepositioned weapon. What safety measures could have been taken to prevent him from accessing firearms? Should individuals under contested divorce proceedings involving allegations of coercive behavior be temporarily barred from accessing stored weapons? Would a court-mandated inventory of firearms during separation proceedings have flagged Bryant's access? Should the existence of private storage units containing firearms trigger automatic reporting in domestic cases? Should restraining orders automatically restrict access to weapons? Is it time to revise laws so that filing for divorce automatically flags risk-level behavior in one partner? Should temporary restraining orders be granted during divorce proceedings when one partner refuses to sign papers? Could red flag laws have applied to Bryant, even if Takesha had not reported direct threats? Shortly after 5 p.m. on March 25, 2025, Orlando law enforcement responded to a domestic disturbance call at a residential home in Orange County. The report had come from neighbors who claimed to hear gunshots fired from within the property. When deputies arrived, they discovered 42-year-old Takesha Renee Eads lying unresponsive inside the home's bathroom. Emergency medical responders confirmed that she was dead at the scene from multiple gunshot wounds. Inside the home, her estranged husband, Lamar Antonio Bryant, 41, was found and taken into custody without resistance. According to the official arrest affidavit, Bryant made no attempt to flee, hide evidence, or deny his presence during the incident. He was compliant with officers and was immediately detained on site. Following the arrest, Bryant was transported to the Orange County Jail, where he was officially booked and charged with first-degree murder. The charge was filed after investigators reviewed the timeline of events, Bryant's actions prior to the shooting, and the autopsy results. According to authorities, Bryant had deliberately armed himself with 2 loaded firearms retrieved earlier that day from a private storage unit. He had also consumed alcohol while transporting their daughter home from school. The decision to press first-degree murder charges was based on evidence suggesting premeditation. Bryant's stop at a liquor store, his detour to a storage unit to collect firearms, and his calm return home pointed toward a calculated act rather than a crime of passion. According to detectives, the firearms were placed on the center console of his vehicle and remained accessible until the moment he followed Takesha into the residence. In their preliminary findings, investigators concluded that the motive was directly tied to Takesha's decision to file for divorce. Official court records confirmed that Takesha had filed divorce papers prior to her death and that Bryant had refused to sign them. No additional protective orders were in place at the time of the murder. Bryant was denied bond during his initial court appearance. Prosecutors cited the danger he posed to the public and his own family, along with the evidence of planning and lethal intent. He was remanded into custody at Orange County Jail pending trial. This arrest marked the end of a lethal domestic episode, but it triggered a much larger conversation about intimate partner violence, control, and the legal system's ability to protect victims in the middle of high-conflict separations. In the days following the murder, Takesha's family and friends issued public statements expressing their grief and calling for change.
Now to a mother of 4 who was loved in her church and community.
Yeah, her husband is accused of shooting and killing her earlier this week inside a home on West Livingston Street, right off Pine Hills Road in Orange County. Family members describe her as a rock who supported many. News 6's Jarrell Baker spoke to them about the loss.
Even though I have so much love around me, the one person that I want is not here, and I need her. I need her.
Cordesia Page says her family is heartbroken trying to make sense of her mother's tragic death.
Just watching people go through certain stuff like this, I promise you,
We never would have thought. My
expected
mom
that.
just buried her sister, and me and my little sister, Takaya, we was just saying, we don't know what we'll do if this happens to us.
Takesha Eads was shot and killed Tuesday in her home. Eads' husband was arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
I'm walking in him. I walked past him. I asked him what's going on. He told me nothing. And I found her like that. That's why it's taking a toll on me so bad, because I can't stop seeing what I saw.
She said it's even harder for her siblings like Lamar Bryant Jr. because her accused killer is their father.
Everything happened 2 days for my birthday. It still ain't adding up, calculating for me.
Page says her mother was the backbone of their family, a praise dancer for their church, and used her time to uplift others around her.
Can't nobody pray how my mama prayed. My mama was really devoted to God, and after he did what he did to my mom, I promise you, he's forgiven by her. She forgives him.
Page says right now the family is asking for privacy, but they plan to hold several events to celebrate their mom's legacy and impact on the community next week. In Orlando, Jarrell Baker, Getting Results, News 6.
The most vocal was her daughter, Cordesia Page, who not only spoke about the personal impact of losing her mother, but also issued a broader warning to victims of domestic abuse. According to Page, her mother had done everything by the book, filed for divorce, leaned on community support, and sought peace, but still ended up dead. In her televised statement, she said, "If you're in a situation where things aren't getting better and someone refuses to let you go, please understand that it won't magically change. You have to get out safely, and you have to make a plan. My mom wanted peace. She tried to leave, but he took her life anyway." Page used her voice to urge other women facing similar situations to not assume that legal separation alone guarantees safety. She emphasized the importance of planning, warning signs, and early intervention. The rest of the family described Takeshia as a woman of faith and structure. They confirmed her deep involvement in her local church, United Hands Ministry, where she has spent nearly a decade participating in outreach work, youth mentorship, and praise dance. Her fellow congregants, including the church's pastor, Rosalind Eason, describe her as a jewel of the ministry, someone who inspired others through her consistency and character. Takeshia's murder caused a ripple effect of shock throughout the local faith community. Many church members expressed disbelief that a woman so publicly devoted to peace, healing, and helping others could be murdered in such a violent, calculated way. Church leaders held a memorial event in her honor, during which community members recited prayers and shared memories of her positive influence. Beyond emotional impact, the church and the family began advocating for systemic change. They questioned how Bryant was able to access weapons while facing a divorce, and why the court system didn't take more proactive steps to assess the threat he posed. The case reignited discussion around domestic violence reform in Florida, particularly regarding the enforcement of gun restrictions in volatile domestic situations, the ability for one party to delay divorce proceedings by refusing to sign, the lack of mandatory risk assessments during contested separations. Several family members began circulating a petition calling for automatic temporary protection orders in high-risk divorce cases, especially those involving custody and a history of manipulation or control. A GoFundMe campaign was also launched to assist a family with funeral expenses and to support Takeshia's children and grandchildren. As of the last update, it had raised over $1,800, with donations coming in from across the community. The murder of Takeshia Eads added another name to the growing list of domestic violence fatalities in the United States, where data continues to show that women are most at risk of being killed when they attempt to leave abusive partners. Takeshia's death followed the same pattern: attempted separation, escalation, and fatal outcome. Should courts have the power to finalize divorces even if one partner refuses to sign? Should firearm access be automatically suspended for individuals undergoing contested divorces? Do you think enough safety protocols are in place when a victim begins a legal process to leave a marriage? Should storage units be monitored more closely when linked to known offenders? How can communities better identify which relationships are at highest risk of turning lethal? In the days following the murder of Takeshia Renee Eads, the Orlando community mobilized swiftly. Her death did not go unnoticed. A vigil was held at United Hands Ministry, the church where she had dedicated nearly 10 years of service through praise dance, youth mentoring, and community outreach. The vigil was attended by family, friends, church members, and community leaders. Pastor Rosalind Eason, who led the service, described Takeshia as a jewel and acknowledged her deep impact within the ministry. According to Pastor Eason, Eads was a consistent presence in church activities, offering support to others despite personal challenges. She was known for her leadership in outreach events and for counseling young women. Her absence created a visible void in the congregation. Several members of the congregation also spoke during the vigil. Most statements focus on her dedication to her children, her role as a mother and soon-to-be grandmother, and her effort to find peace during a difficult separation. The vigil was marked by candlelight, silent prayer, and a moment of reflection. There was no public statement from her estranged husband's family. In the aftermath, a GoFundMe campaign was launched to support her children. The fundraising goal was modest, set to help cover funeral costs and immediate living expenses. Within a short time, donations reached nearly $2,000. The page was shared widely across social media platforms, with many contributors citing the need to support victims' families and advocate for stronger domestic violence protections. Simultaneously, local advocacy groups in Orlando reignited conversations about the handling of domestic violence cases. Forums were organized to discuss gaps in the legal and social support systems, particularly for women who are in the process of separation, a period statistically known for heightened danger. United Hands Ministry also partnered with local nonprofits to distribute educational resources on safety planning, legal options, and emergency shelter services. The Orlando Police Department made no formal comment about system failures. However, the details of this case raised several questions in public discourse. These concerns transitioned directly into what many began calling an example of systemic oversight. Despite filing for divorce, Takeshia Eads did not receive the legal protection she may have needed. According to publicly available records, Takeshia had initiated the divorce process. However, her estranged husband, Lamar Antonio Bryant, refused to sign the divorce papers. In many states, including Florida, this refusal does not immediately halt the process, but it can delay court proceedings and leave the victim in a vulnerable state. There is no known restraining order on record for Bryant at the time of the shooting. That detail became a critical talking point after the murder. In many domestic abuse cases, survivors either avoid filing for protective orders due to fear of retaliation or are denied them due to insufficient evidence of physical threat. Takeshia's case reflected that legal gray area. There may have been no documented threats before the fatal encounter, allowing Bryant to move freely without legal restrictions. Equally concerning was the discovery that Bryant had access to firearms and narcotics, which he stored in a personal storage unit. On the day of the murder, Bryant reportedly stopped at this unit after picking up one of their daughters from school. Inside, he retrieved 2 firearms and returned to the car, placing the loaded weapons on the center console before driving home. The contents of the storage unit raised specific questions. Was law enforcement aware that Bryant had access to firearms? If the divorce involved safety concerns, why was no emergency search or restriction placed on potential weapon storage? Should private storage units be subject to greater scrutiny in known domestic violence cases? As of now, no official explanation has been provided for why the storage unit remained unchecked. This incident highlighted a recurring flaw in domestic abuse response protocols. Unless there is a formal report or protective order, law enforcement has limited authority to intervene preemptively. In cases where threats are undocumented or verbal, abusers often operate without restriction. The events of this case present 2 clear points of failure. Legal delay due to refusal to sign divorce papers. This allowed the marriage to remain active and may have contributed to a false perception of stability. Unregulated access to firearms and narcotics. Despite a pending divorce and visible conflict, Bryant had no legal obstacles preventing him from acquiring or storing weapons. These points led to growing demands in the Orlando community for policy changes. Should courts enforce mandatory deadlines for divorce proceedings when one party refuses to cooperate? Should firearm storage units be flagged and monitored for individuals involved in domestic disputes? Takeshia Eads followed what many consider the right path. She filed for divorce. She remained active in her church and family life. She stayed involved in her children's routines. And yet, she was murdered inside her own home. Her case underscores a hard reality. When legal systems are slow and when restraining orders are absent or inapplicable, victims remain at risk. The perception that filing for divorce or asking for help is enough to stop a violent individual has been disproven again and again. This is the tragic consequence of unchecked control and unaddressed red flags. Bryant's refusal to sign the divorce papers was not seen as a threat. His access to weapons was not investigated. His ability to move freely, even after displaying signs of instability, remained unchallenged. This case also reinforces a fact long known by domestic violence experts. Separation is the most dangerous phase in an abusive relationship. Victims attempting to leave face heightened risk. The need for proactive intervention during this period is critical. There are steps victims can take, but the burden cannot fall solely on them. Law enforcement, courts, and policymakers must strengthen the infrastructure designed to support and protect individuals seeking safety. For those watching this case and wondering what could be done, here are the facts. Domestic violence affects 1 in 3 women globally. The risk of homicide increases significantly when a woman attempts to leave. Firearm access is a leading factor in fatal outcomes. Many abusers show no prior criminal record, making prevention difficult without early reporting and intervention. If you or someone you know is in danger, resources are available. National Domestic Violence Hotline. Telephone receiver 1-800-799-7233. Available 24/7. Confidential. Free. As we close this story, take a moment to reflect on the life of Takeshia Renee Eads, a mother, grandmother, community member, and individual whose only mistake was trying to leave. No one should lose their life trying to walk away. If you're in danger, speak up, reach out. Silence is never safety. In memory of Takeshia Renee Eads, 1982 to 2025. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.